Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent. Line's good. Got real close.
The hair high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham Scott, alongside, as always, hello, Scott.
Sean, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. I have not gone outside. It is 8:40 p.m., and I have not ventured to the cold of Ottawa on this Wednesday.
Good for you, man. It is really cold out there.
Yeah.
A little bit of snow tomorrow, maybe a bit of warm up, but yeah, it's been a cold couple of months. But you know what that means? The canal is frozen still.
Indeed. Yep.
It has been open for more days, I think, than in the last 3 years combined.
Yeah, probably.
And so just in time for winterlude, Sean, you got any plans to go do some winterluding this weekend?
No, I don't. Although I do have to go downtown at some point, and there is I saw a photo of what appears to be a very delightful ice sculpture in front of the National War Memorial that I would like to see in person. So I think I'll make a venture. And then I believe there's more ice sculptures down on Spark Street. So I think I'll check out the ice sculptures. Those are always a lot of fun to look at.
Yeah, the ice sculptures are cool. That's probably my favorite thing about Winterlude. The crowds are maybe my least.
Yeah.
But, you know, it happens. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. I think I'm going to try to get out for another skate this weekend. It's been a minute since my last, but yeah, the temperatures are making it good.
Indeed. It is very cold. It has been very cold here in Ottawa, but as you know, that's sort of what happens in winter. But I have noted we are at, I think 5:15 was the sunset today, so almost a full hour from the earliest sunset about 6 weeks ago. So we're making up some good time there. I actually left the office yesterday and it was light. It was the first time I walked down the little street that my office is on in the light since what feels like the time change.
Yeah.
So it's a nice change to have a bit of light there going down the street.
Yeah, no doubt. When I drive home from work, sometimes I drive, and driving right down the street downtown, like it's the sun is right
in your face.
And it's only like that for maybe 1.5 weeks a year. Mm-hmm. But at that time, it just really sucks. Right, so yeah. I need to remember this week so that next year I just take the train every
there you go.
day that week. So, yeah.
Now, because it is, of course, February, as the calendar has flipped over here to the second month of 2025, it does mean that the Season of Champions is upon us as the Scotties Tournament of Hearts kicks off next Friday in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Then we will have the traditional 10-day event, which that's not traditional, but 10 days of curling, but then the traditional 4 days of nothing, and then another 10 days before 4 days of nothing, and then 9 days, and then 4 days of nothing, and 9 more days, and then 4 days of, or not even 4 days of nothing. And then it's like a day off and go play in the Players' Championship.
Go to the Players.
So this is the stretch of curling that is the most consistent in terms of the televised games, the events come like one after another, just bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
And Scott, over the years, we have talked and alluded to the fact that at this time of year, there are noticeable changes in the games that we play at the recreational level.
Definitely, Sean. Definitely. People start watching these games. They start calling the game differently. They start attempting shots that they have no business attempting, or, they're like, oh, I can make this a run back double from 18 feet away, and you're like, really? Can you? But yeah, definitely some differences that start to crop up this time of year.
Yeah, so I've come up with a list of 5 things that I really notice at this time of year that change. And some of them might just be time of year. Others might be the fact that people are watching more curling on TV. Now, I don't know if this has had as much of an effect in the, say, last 5 to 10 years with more slams, or just the slams being more prominent
Mhm.
on TV and more streaming games and all that. But I think for the more casual curling fan, these events are the ones that capture a lot more attention. They're also longer. There's more draws. Like it has more of a chance to catch people's eye.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to the slams, at least in Canada, Scotties in the Briar, it's your national championship. It has a longer history. It gets a little bit more just casual attention. People will talk about it around the club a little more than the slams do. And then
Mhm.
certainly the world championships have that cachet about them. So I think there is a little bit more focus on them for your casual curling fans. So go through the list, and Scott, we'll talk about them. And then we'll also want to talk about how much of it is related to the games that are on TV. I will
Okay.
note too, we will talk about the USA National Championships. I'm not trying to bury that, although I
Yeah.
will bury part of that when we get to it, because I had some major issues with the streaming on Sunday, and maybe it was just me in my house. I don't know, but I'll bury that part of it. But we're not trying to bury the event in its totality. We just didn't want to talk about it in great detail, partly because the stream was terrible on Sunday for me to be able to watch the final. Anyway,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
first one, Scott, biggest change, or one of the biggest changes in February and March that I've noticed over the years, is that we get shorter games. And this is the one that I'm not sure if it's directly related, or if you can even tie it back to the increased number of games on TV, or if it's just it's February and March. And for most people, the season's kind of over. In October, November, you could make this case of, oh, well, we're down 5 with 2 ends left, but we need the extra game, or we need the extra throws. We're just getting warmed up. Or a lot of times you'll hear if the rocks are away from the glass, people will just say, oh, we'll throw them back
Yeah.
because you got to take them down anyway. In March, I think people are much less inclined to throw them back. They're like, we'll just kick them back. It's fine. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that is related to what's on TV, although I do think that some of the other things that we'll talk about perhaps lead to shorter games because scores might get out of hand a little quicker.
A little quicker. Yeah. And I think there's going to be a little bit of fatigue coming with that, right?
Mhm.
Where we've played so many games already. A lot of times you're playing the same teams
Yeah,
for a second or maybe third time, and there's less novelty to sometimes playing the same teams
sure.
over and over again. You're like, all right, I know what these guys can do. I know they're gonna definitely beat me if they get up by 3 or 4. So why bother?
Mhm.
Um, that kind of mentality can seep in, but I don't know. I guess we're going to talk more about the kinds of shots that people are trying, all that stuff. So that could be it too. The other factor that sometimes I think about, Sean, is there's usually curling on the TV in the lounge.
Mhm.
And if your game is like, we could play one more end, but it's likely not going to make a difference. Hey, I want to go in and watch Rachel Holman playing on the TV in the club, right?
Yep.
That kind of thing can start to happen. So there's a confluence of factors
Mhm.
that all lead to this phenomenon.
Yeah, which is interesting because we play on Monday nights and I also play on Thursday nights. And through the entirety of the fall, there are football games on both of those nights. And even when you're sitting in there, games on, if it's close and late, like people will sort of look at it and maybe discuss,
Yeah.
but not as much as when it's curling. And maybe it's because you know that everybody at the table to a certain extent has to like curling because you're there at a curling club. So everyone will kind of look at it and talk about it, whereas not everybody necessarily likes football. So, but you don't have that same phenomena of, oh, well, let's get off and just watch the game when it's football, or even when it's a hockey game. Maybe if it's a big Senators game, but if you could find me a big Senators game since I've lived in Ottawa, please do.
Hey, Sean, they're on a heater,
Let me
man.
know.
They're on a heater.
They're on a heater, and it's fun when they're good. Absolutely. But they haven't had a lot of big games in recent years. I think that's a fair way to say it. So I don't know if there's a comparable to the curling. I think that's a really good point. That get off and watch the game, and especially when you're in a club where this is the case for me in Regina as well as here in Ottawa, where if a team is representing your club at the national championship, that makes it a really cool thing as well.
It's definitely cool to do that. And part of why we started the podcast, Sean, was we were like, oh, it would be kind of fun to talk about curling as if you were talking about it after a game, right? You're getting together with your opponents to discuss how the game went down, all those kinds of things. And we thought, hey, that's pretty fun. We like doing that. Let's see if more people are interested in listening. And so far, some of you are.
So that is one thing I've noticed is the shorter games. Next one is, let's talk about the shots, Scott. Shots that people might not look at in October and November suddenly become not only, let's try it. Now they're makeable as when people talk about them. Yeah. The double run, triple takeout that is now possible. Oh, the angle is definitely there. Everybody turns into Mike Harris all of a sudden. Oh, that's definitely there. Like the quad run, triple takeout, easy. It's basically just a nose hit, right? Like that. Yeah. That mentality really does seep in, and you see people throw these bigger shots, crazier shots. And the one thing that really stands out, and this is something I think it's important for everybody who plays recreational to be careful about, people throw it harder too.
Yeah.
Because the people on TV can really whip it, but that's because most, if not all of them, have stronger legs than you do.
Yeah.
And can do that. And they're also wearing very thick sliders. So they, with the same kick that maybe you have, they could go a lot faster. And they can extend their arm and still be accurate. Most rec players struggle with that.
Yeah, that's where you set it in a different direction.
Yeah, so rocks it can be dangerous if you don't have enough people catching the rocks and being prepared for that. But that's something that happens is people try crazy shots, they'll throw it harder, and the strategy kind of changes a little bit.
For sure. And one of the things that you don't always realize is that the rocks at most curling facilities just don't have the same kind of action as the rocks that you see on TV, right? The people on TV can make, triple takeouts with board weight, and you just can't really do that with stones that are found at most facilities because they're used more. They've got thicker striking bands, so less energy gets transferred when they make contact. So as a result, if you want to get those big weight shots, you actually do have to throw it harder to achieve the results. And you can see people making mistakes, or even some dangerous situations where you got people trying to skip over rocks and stuff and all that. So seeing those, like, they definitely increase. And I don't know what we're going to get to next, but people definitely think about a lot more shots and different kinds of shots than they're used to playing.
Yeah, I think it's important too. You mentioned, that the rocks on TV are a lot livelier. Like, sometimes it feels like with a well-directioned sneeze, you could make a triple takeout with the way those rocks have so much action on them. And most clubs don't have that. I would like to see the slams have like a dead house spiel. Like, have one of the events, see what happens. Have a thicker striking band. Don't make the houses so lively. See what happens. I know all the players would complain that it's not as exciting. Maybe it wouldn't be as exciting. I don't know, but you're the slams. You guys try stuff and see what happens. And if it fails and it goes the way of the Elite 10, then fine. Right. At least you tried.
Yeah, and I think it would be cool to see the strategy that some teams would employ, knowing that they can do less damage with their big weight shots.
Yeah, freezes actually become interesting now, where
Mhm.
even now, if you make a perfect freeze in most arena conditions, it's going away with a big weight hit.
Yeah, yeah, which doesn't really amp up the drama.
No, no.
Yeah.
All right. Next change in February and March. People look at angles a lot more. Like this goes with the shots, but
Mhm.
the way in which people think about and assess angles changes. That there's a lot more, I feel like, calling down to the other end of like, how much can you see of this? Or if I hit a third, or if I hit half, or like those sorts of discussions come up a lot more. Whereas I feel like early in the season, it's let's see if we can just remove this other team's stone. Now it's like, okay, we have to actually hit 7/8 of it to get this over here. Like, I just feel like angles become a lot more. Certainly, the drag effect comes up a lot more. People talk about drag way more. Thank you, Russ.
Mhm.
Gear doesn't come up quite as much, but sometimes it does. So like these sorts of things, these terms come up a lot more. One of my favorites, it kind of came up in a game we played it on Monday, Scott, because they mention it all the time on the broadcast. Sometimes the rings aren't true,
Ah,
right? Or
yes, yes, yes.
the pin might not be perfectly centered, so that might be in, it might not be in. Right? Like these sorts of things get spoken of a lot more in February and March, I think, than they do earlier in the year.
Yeah, that's probably right. Definitely the drag effect. People think about it a lot more. I was thinking about it on Monday just because of the way some of the rocks got positioned and
Mhm.
the opportunities we had. But yeah, I think all these terms that come out and I, again, it makes people think about their shots more, and because of that, I think games slow down big time in February and March, and maybe we're getting to that, but uh, it's everybody's looking at like, oh, this angle, and you're like, come on, man, you wouldn't have been looking at it this hard in November.
Yeah.
Just throw what you're gonna throw. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't.
Yeah.
So
Which is weird. I mean, in a lot of games, I say that my chances of making the Briar are the exact same, whether we win, whether we lose, whether I make the shot, whether I miss the shot.
yeah,
That is like even more true in March when the Briar is happening right now. Like
yeah,
you could be like, well, in theory, just in November, if we play really well, yes, we could get to the Briar because theoretically it's open to any curler. You just register and you can go and you can get there. Yes, fine. If you want to say that to me in November, sure. But in March, when it's on the TV on the other side of that glass, we're not
yeah,
getting there. So let's pick up the pace.
yeah, exactly, Sean. We're well said, I'd say.
Yeah. So that was my next one with slower games.
Mhm.
I do think games get slower because of all of this. And one thing that I would like recreational players to do when they have the opportunity to go to these events. If you ever get to go to a slam, national championship, even like the spiel in Penticton, that they have that new floors one, like those sorts of spiels where there's a lot of elite level teams, watch what the front end
Yes,
does in
yes,
between rocks. It's I say this all the time. Everybody wants to be Jennifer Jones with the very elaborate pre-shot routine. But for that to work, somebody has to be Don McEwen,
yeah,
right? That's why that worked. That her front end, principally McEwen and Officer, were in the hack, ready to throw all the time. So
mhm,
they didn't lose time that allowed Jennifer Jones that routine. And not everybody can have that routine, but everybody sees that because we don't show the leads ever
mhm.
on TV. So you don't actually necessarily understand or appreciate how good these players are at saving time for their skips. I've seen Ben Hebert do 2 rocks in 4 seconds of thinking time.
Yeah,
Like it's incredible how efficient they can be in the house or in the hack getting things ready. So I think if everybody watched that, well, okay, like I understand you can have a routine and all that, but you can do a lot of that before it's your turn to throw. As soon as the other team lets the rock go, you're getting the rock, you're cleaning it off, you're in the hack. Like, you can do a lot of that before the other team goes, but because most of the skips have routines and take a little bit of time to throw, and that's what everybody looks at and focuses on, I do think that games definitely slow down.
Oh, big time. And it happens a lot, like you said, on those front end rocks where there's a lot more talking back and forth up and down the sheet. I may have been guilty of this occasionally with our old team, but yeah, it's this the skip gets a little more indecisive,
Yeah.
and because of that, the front end feels, oh, now I can chime in, and so even though it's like you didn't need to say anything, so that's what I see as the biggest time waster, is that the skips they seem indecisive because they're thinking longer. So then the front ends interject and that takes even more time.
Yeah.
So I would say to skips, especially, like, just have a good idea what you're going to do. Be decisive about it. If you need to take a beat, don't look and say, what do you like?
Right.
Because who cares? And, I mean, if it's in turn, out turn for a hit, which one? Sure, you can ask. But if you've got an idea in your head of how you want to play the game, just call it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just whatever you were doing in October, November, keep doing it. Right. And now we did talk in the fall that maybe you would have a strategy or a team philosophy of, well, the first half of the season, we're going to try different shots. We're not necessarily going to play what we would think is optimal strategy. You want to try things. It's okay, fine. In that case, yeah, you might want to change, but you should have an idea as the skip at the start of each end. What do you want to do? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And what is the path through which you would like to accomplish that? So certainly for the first 4 rocks at the end, the lead rocks, you should know what you want to do. And then second rocks through that too. If something happens where there's a couple misses, something weird happens, then okay, you might have to sit and think. But generally speaking, you should know how you want the end to progress.
Mm-hmm.
And for as much as, I said that for front end players, the time that the other team's rock is coming down the ice, that's when you get ready. As a skip too, yes, you're watching the line, you're seeing what's going on, but you're also thinking that whole time of, okay, where can this one end up? What do I want to do? But again, I really do think that this one is directly attributed to, or attributable to, more games on TV, that people just kill a lot of time on discussion and way more time in the hack.
Yeah. And like you say, that can only work if the rest of the game is going fast. So it can't be a lot of discussion on every shot and you're playing 6 ends. That's not gonna be sustainable.
Yeah.
Or
so
if you're playing Sean, do it because it will enrage him to the point where
you'll win.
He will not want to participate anymore.
Yeah, you will win the game against me. So the math of this is actually quite simple though, Scott. And if every player takes 8.5 seconds longer than they need to on each shot, right? 8.5 seconds. That doesn't seem like that long, 8.5 seconds. But if you can tighten it up by 8.5 seconds, that works out to 8 minutes over the course of a game. Actually, more than 8 minutes, but I'm rounding down. 8 minutes over the course of the game, which in a lot of cases in our league is the difference between getting an eighth end in.
Yeah,
based on the time rule, right? So it doesn't seem like a lot, but if everybody can tighten up a little bit, then you can get more ends in. But the problem at this time of year is people tend to extend by 8.5 seconds based on what they were doing earlier on average.
Yeah, and a lot are already only getting 7 ends in. So we'll talk a little bit later about our Monday night game, but it was a slog.
Yes, it was. So the last one that I have that really changes here in February and March with the games on TV in the season of champions, it gets a lot louder in the ice shed. I think, Scott, the line calls get a little more panicky. The weight calls get a little more volume to them. It just gets louder because on TV, it's pretty loud and they yell really loud. Now, what I think gets forgotten sometimes is when they're yelling, they're in a giant arena and oftentimes have to yell that loud, certainly during the round robins, so that the other players can actually hear them.
Yeah.
In an arena or in a curling club, especially ones that don't have a lot of soft surfaces on the walls, it turns into this cacophony of awfulness sometimes, this really echoey, that this sort of dome of noise that I really feel like it gets louder at this time of year.
Yeah, you're probably right. And maybe this was more in the days of Russ Howard.
Yeah.
Greg Smith could have influenced this a little bit. Those real screamers. I always remember Russ's voice at the end of the week. He like couldn't talk.
By Tuesday,
all he could do is scream.
Yeah. Well, in addition to his line calling, I'm sure, trying to even just carry on a conversation in the patch probably.
Yeah, it's pretty loud
in there right? Too,
Yeah, so definitely a little bit louder. I think what we do is pretty good. Like I sort of shake my broom if I want you guys to sweep early, and most of the time that works pretty well because one of you will look down. So I will recommend hand signals, broom signals, those sorts of things to get around the need to scream, especially when there's people screaming on the sheet beside you, maybe on both sides of you at certain points. Yeah. It just becomes a little too much.
Yeah, there was a game a couple of weeks ago. I played third on the Thursday team, and it was our last shot of the game. We were trying to steal to win, and I really, I really let it fly on the line call on that one. So much so that one of the guys afterwards, John, he was like, "Yeah, I actually knew you were serious on that one. I didn't have to look up." and part of it was because it was against guys we knew and they play together on another night, and like it was like, well, let's beat them. And as I was walking into the club, I got heckled from the car from one of these guys driving by. So I was like, yeah, let's get them.
Let's go.
But generally speaking, yeah, there's other ways around it. Yeah, I like hand signals where possible.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're competing with, this is always the best, like the sheet next to you want your people to sweep, they're calling their people off. Yeah. And if you sound somewhat alike, you're kind of competing with each other.
Yeah.
On who, like when I say yes, his people start sweeping and he screams no, and my people stop sweeping. It's this weird cross of things that I do think just gets worse at this time of year.
Yeah. I think you're right. It does get worse. It's just a lot. So like, let's all work on our hand signals or broom signals and chill out a bit.
Yeah, Sarah Colton, first time she was at the Scotties, she had tape on her gloves, red and green, and she would just flip it around back and forth. That Scotties back in Montreal, which was necessary because the whole team was sick and could barely talk anyway. So, so there you have it. 5 things that I think change in February and March with more teams and more games on the TV here in the Season of Champions. Speaking of the Seasons of Champions, Scott, the USA Nationals took place last week, finished up over the weekend. We have our representatives for the World Championship from the United States of America. On the women's side, Tabitha Peterson comes back. First event after having a child and wins. So congratulations to her. On the men's side, Corey Dropkin, he wins, beating Daniel Casper in the final there. Schuster does not win. I don't think that counts as our bold prediction because we were talking Olympics, Olympic qualifier, I think. So we have to wait for the USA Olympic qualifiers before we count that as a win. But congratulations to Corey Dropkin. Made a phenomenal shot to win that game. I was able to see that, not in real time, but I was able to see that. So great job by them, not only on the shot, beautiful shot to win the game. Daniel Casper was set up, really looked like they were going to steal. Corey Dropkin makes a beauty, a big weight shot. And then the celebration, Pat Simmons is still going to be my favorite broom toss, but these ones might have been higher and certainly were louder.
Higher than in the rafters.
Like they let him fly and were more like Pat Simmons just had that cool calm of like, of course I did that. And these guys were like fired up in the like more like outwardly fired up. It was kind of like if it was for John Morris's celebrating that same, the way Morris celebrated that shot or Carter Rycroft celebrate. If it was, they were all like that. Really fired up. So it was a great celebration in the moment. Congratulations to them. They will be the representatives for the United States at the Men's World Championship. So it seemed like it was a pretty good event all around. I did watch a couple games on the stream, Scott, over the course of the week. Good job by USA Curling. It was really well done until Sunday. And maybe this was just me, but I go into the YouTube and I go to the USA Curling YouTube channel. And I had looked to see what the score was because I knew the game had already started and it was in the fourth end. Mm-hmm. And on the stream, it was the second end and it said I was live. And I thought that's weird, but okay, fine. And so I see the last shot of the second end, which was a Corey Dropkin draw for one. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, great. I'll just, even though I know the score in the third and fourth, it doesn't hurt to watch the two ends. And it goes to the commercial. And when it comes back, it's seconds rocks of the second end. And it still says live. So I think, okay, this is strange. And I take the cursor thing and I scroll it back. And that's just what it was. It just kind of kept looping on me. So I gave up after about 5 minutes of like constantly going back and forth and refreshing and hitting live again. And I just gave up and didn't watch it in the moment, then went back and watched the highlights of it afterwards. But everything else over the course of the week, every time I had tuned in, it was good. It was a good quality stream. They had the announcers on it. Everything looked good, different camera angles. Everything was very well done. And then out of nowhere, I get this looping problem on Sunday during the men's final.
Yeah, during the final is a bad time for that to happen. And yeah, like I'm on the website now, right, trying to watch some replay, and yeah, it's not even working the way I'd like it to. So unfortunate. For our American friends. Those of you who were watching, I want to know if they had similar experiences. I know we have a lot of listeners that watch and follow the USA Nationals pretty closely. So I'd like to hear if there was a similar experience there.
Yeah, let me know if that was just me or if anybody else was getting the looping. I mean, it was a nice draw to score one, but I didn't need to see it 7 times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I did want to point out, Sean, Daniel Casper and his team, undefeated through the round robin, win the Page 1 versus 2 against Corey Dropkin, and then lose in the extra end in the final. Tough for them, but good to see them performing really, really well on this stage. I think it bodes well for their chances for Olympic qualification, and just like nice to have another team out of the US that we're excited about seeing. And so I think a lot of good things in store for them.
Yeah, made the playoffs last year. Obviously an improvement this year. Yeah, they did go 2-1 against Corey Dropkin. They just lost the wrong one, unfortunately for them. But yeah, it does bode well for them and certainly the future of men's curling in the United States. Not quite, I think, the same level of depth on the women's side, but still certainly some very good teams on the women's side there in the United States. I think if you gave USA Curling some true serum, they're probably pleased that it's Tabitha Peterson going to the World Championship, given that the United States women finished 7th, I believe, last year at the World. So they have a bit of work to do to ensure that Olympic spot and not having to go to the last chance qualifier. So, I mean, a playoff berth will do it and they'll be fine, but it will take some work because the women's field internationally is very, very deep. So it's certainly not a guarantee in the 6-team playoff that you'll get in. So Team Peterson is going to have a pretty good week to make sure that the USA clinches that spot at this year's Worlds.
For sure, and they'll be ready for it. They'll be prepped. So wish them the best of luck at the World Championships.
Indeed. And other championships, other national championships are going on in Switzerland and Scotland right now. You can check those out. The Swedish national championships took place over the weekend as well. The longest running drought of a national championship for a good team continued on the men's side, Scott, as Nicholas Edin once again fails to capture that Swedish national curling championship. It was Joel Westerberg and his team win in the final. So congratulations to them. And on the women's side, it was Emma Moberg and her team winning. Of course, the teams that you might expect don't play in that event. So there you go. But congratulations to those two. It's a national championship is cool. Good for them.
I think it's nice of them to give other teams a chance. Why not?
Yeah. So there you have it. I think that's all the goings-ons from results. We had some more men's provincial championships over the weekend. Jimmy the Kid will be back at the Briar. Was Jamie Cooey lost in the Northwest Territories, bit of a surprise there. But we'll cover all that once we get to the Briar preview. Manitoba men's playdowns started today. They got live streaming going on. Alberta also is kicking off and finishing up over the weekend. I have not seen anything out of Alberta as yet, but the stream from Manitoba was pretty good. Again, multi-camera and going back and forth, 5 sheets out there in arena. So pretty good setup there for Manitoba. So you can follow all that with the streaming over the weekend.
Yeah, the Alberta's streamed on Curling Zone SSN.
Nice.
And it looks like it's static cameras from each end with the houses in the middle.
Beauty. Is that still the Boston Pizza Cup?
Yeah, Boston Pizza is still the title sponsor. It's the Alberta Boston Pizza Cup presented by Best Western. And actually there is a game right now.
Wait, so does Best Western give money to Boston Pizza that then gives the money to Alberta Curling?
Yeah, maybe. No, this is a full stream, so I would take back what I said earlier.
So probably then they would have all sheets then if they have some static cameras elsewhere.
They might do. Yeah, this is the featured one. There might be others, which I don't see right now. But Sean, if you tune in now, you see Kevin Cooey wearing a toque.
It's pretty chilly out there on the ice.
Seems that way.
Yeah. So some actually, not actually, like in this era, the provincial championships, I think, are more interesting than they were in the pure wildcard era. So you have Cooey playing in Alberta, of course, has to win that new look Cooey team. Carruthers, I think, is the favorite on the men's side. There in Manitoba, they added BJ Neufeld. He's playing with them this week. I believe it was Kyle Daring, who's went down to the 5th spot on that team, but they're probably the favorite in Manitoba. But Manitoba is very, very good. And I'll tell you, Scott, turned on that stream today. I didn't recognize either of the teams that were the feature game when I turned it on. But man, I love that they were clearly one of the team was like either junior age or just out of junior. They're still teaching the tuck. I love it.
Nice.
A lot of tuckers out there. So really cool to see. So you can go along with those. Those, I believe, are the last spots that need to be decided for the Briar. Of course, the Scotties lineup is fully formed. Pools and stuff are available. And that's what we are going to talk about next week when we join you for our big Scotties preview as the Scotties Tournament of Hearts kicks off next Friday night, the 14th of February. Nothing more romantic on a Valentine's Day, Scott, than sitting down with the person you love and listening to Vic and Russ and Kathy and maybe Joanne. I don't know if she'll be there, but I can't think of anything more romantic on a cold February night.
Sean, it is called the Tournament of Hearts.
That's true.
So pretty apt day for it to begin.
Yes. So that'll be our episode next week. So if you want to make sure you get that and all of our episodes, please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, like, rate, comment All that stuff helps other people find us, keeps us growing. You can head on over to GameStonesPod.com. Past episodes are there under the episodes tab, and click on the link to the merch. If you want to get the 2 hoodie, t-shirts, all the stuff we got going on there, you can follow us on the socials at Game of Stones Pod. I'll actually look at it more often on the socials during the Scotties. Blue Sky is where I'll sort of engage more. Twitter, just it's the algorithm. It's just so not good. I like Blue Sky. It's the people I follow in the order in which they tweet, or Blue Sky, or
Skeet.
whatever it is. Skeet. That's it. That's what I want. And if Twitter was that, anyway, it is what it is. So if you want to sort of engage about the games and stuff, that'll be on Blue Sky. And we also are Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook. And if you want to let us know what you want to hear on the show, Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com. Scott, you referenced it. We played on Monday nights. The late game at the Ottawa Curling Club starts at 8:45. I have a rule that I've implemented for myself this year that if I'm still on the ice at or after 11 p.m., I am going home right away. I am not staying. An addendum to the rule was added on Monday that if the person you usually share a ride share with has gone through food poisoning and is unable to really sweep after halfway through the game, you will also leave right away.
Yeah, you were pretty gassed, Sean. You had an awesome night sweeping on Monday. We played pretty well overall, and I would say our misses were very, 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 very small margins, like centimeters one way or the other. And that was what kind of gave the game away in the end. So I had a bad miss in the second end on a draw against 3. The rest of the game, everything was really close, and we scored 5 in the third. But yeah, it was just like there's so many shots, and I was just like, what the hell? What do we have to do? Because it was either curling just too much, or it was like going good and then stopped curling, or like that kind of thing. We had a terrible pick in the 7th.
Yeah, you had a nasty pick that cost us a point.
Yeah, where like,
and a real pick too. Like Kaylee, who was sparing for us, flipped the rock up, and there were 2 long hairs under it.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't think they were mine, guys. Yeah, so tough one there. That was one of the ones that, if we were going to be staying, or at least just dropping to B, we probably needed to win that one. We do have 1 win under our belts already this round, but 2 real tough games coming up for the next 2. So, we got our work cut out for us, but nothing's impossible.
That's true. Anything can happen. So we'll see what happens. And, maybe we're owed a few after being just on the wrong side of the inch there a bunch on Monday night. But it was actually a pretty fun game overall. I mean, we only scored in 2 ends, but only lost by 2 points.
Yeah.
So a weird game in that respect. But yeah, the season marches along, and 7 games left on the docket, 6 for me. So should be a nice end to the season here as we move along into the season of champions. And that's where we will find ourselves when we join you again next week. So until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.